Okay. Potions. It's all about potions right now. So over here, we got some potions from the Mini Fantasy asset pack. And over here is a terminal window. Here is a sample instance of the earliest version of my game. I got something new implemented recently. Check it out. Every 5 turns, a new enemy is going to spawn. Crack the code as far as being able to spawn entities after the game is running the other day, and now things are starting to really feel like they're coming together. Okay, they got me that time, but getting pretty lucky with these attacks because it's currently hard coded in that every attack, whether done by the player or the enemy, has about a 50% chance of connecting, because we are not doing any sort of formal attack calculations or anything like that yet. One of the reasons is that I only just got HP implemented, max HP, experience points, level, each one of the attributes. It's part of an array. So whenever we want to add a new attribute, it's just going to be a number that we add to this new array. And we have to make sure that we can properly access and set everything. But before we move on to handling things like attack calculations and stuff, I want to make it so that we can restore our health, but I don't want to just hard code in health restoration for potions, right? Like, the potion system needs to be very dynamic. Just like a lot of the other items in the game, just like a lot of the other entities, now that we're using this entity component system, I want to be able to create a potion, but create it in a very specific way. First, we create an entity that's of type item potion, right? Next, we need to tell that potion essentially that it has a particular effect. What is this effect? So if you have individual attributes such as hit points and max hit points, level, and stuff like that, I thought it would be convenient if we could simply attach an effect in a way where we can say this potion increases your HP, by 1d4 plus 1, right? I think this is a good first target, but ultimately, like, something that we would consider, because the assets that they provide us are kind of interesting in this way. We have access to, oops, let's see. So we have access to, so obviously red's going to be health, right? Blue's going to be mana. And you could have a purple potion that's a hybrid between health and mana. At the moment, we don't have any, like, yellow points, right? Like, that could be stamina, that could be food. But just like in D&D, like, for instance, like in a lot of other games, for instance, let's say we eventually find like a potion of like regeneration. So the way that would work is going to be different from the way that a potion of hit points works. So, like, on a potion of hit points, like, we want to be able to say restore nvim, right? Like, number of sides, dice, and then some bonus. So, like, let's say 1d4 plus 1, and like a lot of that will be randomly generated. So, like, if we say we're creating a new potion, we're going to randomly generate how much HP it's going to restore by generating, like we're going to generate a potion of 1d6 plus 1, or 1d4 plus 2, or 2d4 plus 3, so on and so forth. So, like, and which one we generate will depend upon some other parameters, like, which floor of the dungeon we're on, what our experience is currently at, and a lot of other, things like that. So, just thinking through this out loud. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna update channel properties and what's up, Aga? How you doing? This is going science and technology. Um, okay, so yeah, just thinking through this. Let me get my chat up. So like, let's say we pick up a potion of regeneration. How is that going to be different from a potion of HP restore? I mean, regen as a property or as a status effect, the whole idea is that it will randomly restore a certain amount of HP every turn for a certain number of turns. That amount every turn is randomly generated based on the particular strength of the regen potion, right? So the way that we go about defining potions, we have to have two different categories of effect. Status effect is something that will have a duration, as in we'll be able to check to see if an entity has this status effect at the moment. And if they do, then we'll have some sort of counter keeping track of like how many turns remains on that. Like for instance, let's say they got poison. So every turn they would take, say, 1d4 plus 1 damage, for instance. So there's effects and status effects, right? The status effect applies some sort of effect every turn. So what is an effect? Well, an effect is something that results as the result of some other action or event. So as an example, let's say an entity attacks, right? And say it connects. So the way that we're currently doing it, we're kind of hard coding in some of the stuff, but what we want to happen is like, depending upon your sword equipped, right? That determines what damage gets rolled when it connects. So we would have to do a lookup on the weapon equipped and check its damage, get any sort of bonuses that come back from any equipment that the entity is wearing, as well as its own status, and then essentially calculate out like an effect. And in this effect, for this attack, for instance, let's say it's 1 damage to start with, like with nothing. But then let's say you equip something that has a base damage of 1d4, and then your strength is high enough that you have a +1 bonus. And let's say this knife, dagger, whatever, it's also magically imbued and has +1 on it. So the final effect score would be 1d4 plus 2. So 1, 4, and 2 being the three numbers that we end up generating for that effect. And let's say because it is magically imbued, the damage type counts as magic damage. So and the +1s, I mean, at some point we're going to have to differentiate between, is it getting a +1 because it's high quality, or is it getting +1 because it's magically imbued? Because those are two separate cases. So if we have like a damage type, we have the calculated like number, or the numbers that are going to be used in the damage roll or in the damage calculation. And then so like we would look up on the weapon itself, we would have to look up, like I said, the damage, or then we'd have to look up the entity and get its stats, and we would have to get the see if there's any sort of like damage reduction on the target. So there's kind of like layers to this, right? And figuring out potions is going to be really important early on here, because as you can kind of think forward, a lot of the emergent gameplay is going to be dependent upon us being able to properly define potions and other magical items and any item in the game. So if attacking is effective, is essentially applying an effect, we need to scope out like is what's an effect that we could apply besides damage or healing. So one effect we could do is add experience. For instance, we could have a potion of experience gain, right? You know, you drink it and you get 100 experience. And that's a simple case because the only thing we have to do to define it is provide some sort of roll calculation triplet, as well as a which stat we're modifying, and we need to differentiate also between temporary and permanent like modifications, right? So because like for instance, we could have a potion that like temporarily boosts your max HP for a few turns, and then when those turns are up, your max HP reduces back to its original. And so we would want to be able to handle for this kind of possibility. And so right out the gate, like we already have two different types of potions that we need to be able to handle. And the way that we handle them, for instance, so like not every potion is going to apply like some effect immediately like that in terms of just like incrementing your HP. Not every potion is going to apply a status effect like poison or speed up or something. Potion could do nothing. Potion could also have multiple things that it does. So like if something's not a status effect, it could be like an attribute modification. So I've been thinking about how to implement this, right? Because if we have like entity IDs for everything and a potion has an entity ID, and we need to be able to differentiate and distinguish between these different types of potions, and which one has what, right? Like, is it a potion that instantly applies some sort of effect? Is it a potion that temporarily modifies an ability score? Is it a potion that permanently modifies an ability score? Is it a potion that permanently modifies something? Um, is it a potion that see what I'm saying? Like, we got these different types of potions we gotta handle. Let's think about this. Because I'm still trying to decide on potion component, right? But what is a potion effect? How many different types of potions can we have? But like, if we were to have to script this out in a way where we have to say if this potion is an HP healing potion, or if this potion is an MP healing potion, or if this potion is a poison potion, or you see how like every single type that we have to introduce is going to be yet another system that we have to handle. And if there's a way that we can do this where we can just step through a list of effects and operate on each of these effects in the same way for every single effect, so is it a permanent potion or is it a temporary potion? Is it a an HP like which stat does it modify, right? Um, if it's a permanent potion, um, is it permanent? Which stat does it affect? What's the roll calculation? Um, is derated even a word? Yeah. So is it derated or is it instant? What stat does it affect? Um, if it's durated, we have to have a an attached duration, right? Like when the potion gets used, if it's instant, it gets applied immediately and we don't really have to store anything else. But if it's something over time, that's when we need to keep track of like a running effect. We also need to decide whether or not effects are going to like stack over time. So like if you use a potion that's derated, like let's say something that gives you +1 to strength for 5 turns, and then let's say immediately after the next turn, you use another strength potion +1 that lasts for 5 turns as well. How do we want to handle this? Does the system stack? So like would you have an additional +2 strength for a total of the remaining 9 turns? No, not total, but like if we stack them like that, that first +1 would fall off 4 turns later, not 9. I did math wrong. But if you use one like a +1 that lasts for 5 turns, and then the next turn that +1 has 4 turns remaining, you use another potion, and now you have +2 for 4 of those 5 turns, and then on the last turn, you're going to have only +1. So but that would be like over a total of 6 turns, and we would have to keep track of each additional multiplier or each additional thing that we have on top of that, right? So if we're going to stack it like that, then it might make sense that we have the ability to limit this somehow, because otherwise someone could find a way to crash the game in the future. So if it does something besides a stat slot, like for instance, hit points, actually our stat slot right here does have HP already in it. So actually, that's fine. That's fine. So we can actually affect HP with this. So if we instant HP application here, then whatever's in roll would be like 1d4 plus 0, right? And then instant max HP application, that would be fine. And like obviously if you heal your HP, you can't go above your max HP, so that's something that we have to handle when we write this. If we actually had something like strength in here, then it's like ultimately the way that this is going to go is for every additional stat that we add in here, we can directly access it pretty quickly. But for like, let's say, you know, I mean, the whole idea is that all of these are stored on one array. So let's say the player levels up. We haven't implemented this yet either, but what we would want to happen is, depending upon the XP, we would also need to find a way to keep track of like an XP to next level. And once that level up condition gets triggered, we would increment level, of course, and then we would have to step through and, like, for instance, max HP would upgrade, right? Like, so depending upon your class and everything, on your base hit die, your HP would increase. I have to piss. Okay. Welcome back. Hope y'all like that track. I see we got a handful of people in the chat. Why ain't y'all saying nothing? Hope you're talking to me, god damn it. Hope everyone's having a good day. Just ate a small bag of Doritos, and I'm just racking my brain about this design, right? This is how we define a role, because we're going to end up using role in a lot of different places, like attack and using potions, and whether or not a ability succeeds, etc. We don't necessarily want negatives. Would it ever be the case that we end up generating a 0 for the number of times to roll something, or the number of sides? I don't think so. So these assert statements make sense. God damn, we got some motherfucking viewers today. Shit. How y'all doing? Y'all better fucking talk to me, goddamn it. Stream not found, huh? No YouTube detected. What? Please check the YouTube dashboard. The fuck? It says I'm good. Okay, I can see y'all on YouTube chat now. How y'all doing, Dulce? How you doing, Fact? Um, yeah, like chat decided to fucking shit out on me on Restream. But the stream is still going, so I don't know why I can't find the stream. That's weird. Anyway, I can see your chat now. Let me see if I can pop it out. Pop out chat. Fuck yeah, there we go. Sweet. I'm talking. Okay, good. Dulce, I need your help. I need y'all's help. I'm gonna probably pull in Chat GPT as well, or Claude or DeepSeek or one of them. I need y'all to help me define potions. Let me show you what we're working on. Okay, here's the game so far. I'm getting owned. There we go. Fucking slaying them. All right, so we're at a good point to actually throw down some potions, right? I've got the ability to spawn entities arbitrarily in the middle of the game now. And that's important because we need that in order to drop items. I figured the first thing that we should probably drop is a way for us to actually restore our HP. So this is a good opportunity for us to work on potions. So start the stream off asking, what's a potion? What is it at an object level? What is it at a data level? What is a potion from a game rules level, right? And I'm working that out right now. So a potion has an effect when you use it, and it can potentially have more than one effect. So we have to define what a potion effect is in order to be able to programmatically script out the procedural generation of arbitrary potions as they drop in the dungeon, right? It's depending upon certain parameters, certain values, certain states will determine what actually gets dropped and when, right? And in the very beginning, at level 1, we don't want to drop like huge potions. We want to drop some small potions probably, right? Something that actually makes sense within the parameters that you start off with. So I reason out that there's at least 2 types. There's instant potions that instantly apply some sort of attribute increase or detriment or whatever, and then durated ones. In other words, potions that perform some sort of temporary modifier or increase or decrease that lasts a arbitrary preset number of turns. So if we have 2 different types of effect for potion effects, instantly applied effects, and that's what this is right here. And then we could also potentially have something like this. So if it's durated, then we have a limited number of turns that it gets run for. And like that number of turns might be randomly generated every time a potion's created. So duration might be something that's optional, right? So in this case, maybe we don't need a second full ass type for that. So if this is a potion effect, then ideally potions should be able to modify any attribute in a durated or non-durated manner, like instantaneously change some attribute on your character sheet or apply some sort of status effect over time. Now, this would not handle something like move speed at the moment, unless we were to make move speed a like a completely secondary property, like something that adds a stat that can actually be modified and increased and decreased in that way. So over time, you might see something like the number of tiles that you can move be in this slot or something like that. But definitely we're going to be seeing stuff like strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, right? So in addition to a stats type, like let's say you drank a potion that for the next 5 turns, all of your attacks now have fire or something like that, you know? So we would have to extend this over time in order to accommodate for something like that. And things have variable speed, and some roguelike, a certain enemy could move 2 tiles per turn. Right, so, like, that's a good question. Tim Kaine talks about this idea called action points, and I don't know or think that I necessarily want to have action points necessarily, right? But what we might want to do is have things over time, as their stats increase, have the ability to perform additional actions in a given turn. So it wouldn't necessarily be things that have variable speed so much as how many actions they can take in a turn. So if something has the ability to move multiple tiles, then it's more about the way that it does that, right? So if something's able to move 2 tiles in a turn, then it's either going to be moving with 2 actions, which is something that we have yet to implement, but it's this is an idea we're teasing out right now. Either you can move 2 tiles by taking 2 actions because your stats are so high that the game considers you to be moving that fast, like you're moving that much faster than everyone else, that you can take 2 turns for their 1. Or if something's able to move 2 tiles in a single turn, perhaps it has a teleport ability, Perhaps it has glide or fly, or it's sliding across some ice tile or something like that. So like drinking a potion like that could give you could have like a potion of quick move, right? So the way that we go about handling each of these different types of potions, like it's important that we get this design good now, because ultimately we want to be able to procedurally generate any type of potion, and each potion should all operate in a relatively uniform like fashion, in that as soon as you drink it, it's gone. It disappears from your inventory, and whatever effect it applies, either a status effect over time or a instantaneous effect, like let's say you have, like, for instance, let's say you can have a potion that does that thing, right? But you could also have like a scroll that applies a certain effect or does some sort of effect over time. So like when we describe what an effect is, to like generalize this into, because I'm eventually going to have to work out a magic system. Generalizing like what an effect is, as an example, let's take a look in liblogic. Try attack. This is where I'm currently kind of hard coding in the handling of the successful attack registration, right? Like at this point, like you've we roll a dice and it's 50-50. And if it's successful, we do damage, right? And realistically, like what we're actually going to have to do for a proper like attack calculation, we have to take into account like all of the bonuses that your statistics give you, as well as your equipment, and then we roll, and then we compare that roll against the calculated attributes for the target. So their armor class, their base armor class, their armor, any sort of magic gear, any stats bonuses they get. Then we compare those numbers. If your attack is higher than their armor, you hit. So if you hit, then we do damage. So like when we're describing what an effect is, right? This is kind of like the workflow for like how an effect might get applied. And in this case, an effect would be like if we were to try and reduce what's happening here into like a single line. If you don't have an equipped weapon, you do 1 damage. If you do have an equipped weapon, you do 3 damage. So the effect here is that, like, let's say we were to like specify it to just 3, or let's say this was like 1d3, because it's 1 through 3. So you could say the attribute that we're modifying is HP. The roll is 130, and no duration because the type is instant. So as an example, like let's say we had a potion effect like this. Potion instance. Um, 1d3, and then duration would be also 0. If an enemy can move 1.2 tiles per turn, and they move 1.2 tiles, how does it handle situations where you might be split between tiles? That's interesting. I've considered that a game I might make in the future might be real-time based, but still utilize the same grid system where like everything is still placed in a grid, but I would still allow for like movement between tile points and allow for things to like rest. But ideally, the system that I'm building here is only a few lines of code difference between a real-time and a not real-time system. But like, okay, so this would be an example of like a very simplistic like deal X damage, to but actually because like potions typically, you know, we have to specify a direction, right? Like is it going to be like damaging us or is it going to be healing us? What do we call that value? Yeah, and in the game Sheeran, if a enemy is high enough level and has a high enough speed, can sometimes take 2 turns in a single turn. And when you're moving around, it's a pretty scary sight to see. I don't know if I want to call it direction because direction really means something else in the game code context entirely. We could call, say bool curative, like that. Then we can say something like that. We wanted to make a damaging potion that instantly damages you. If we wanted to do like an example effect based on poison, or actually, well, based on light healing. So something like that. Over time, I'm going to have to extend the system in order to accommodate for other possibilities, because like the system doesn't handle anything related to potential elementals that we're going to have to handle. This doesn't handle a lot in general. We're going to have to really work to flesh out the effect system. So like, as an example of this, type dev, no. I didn't type all that extra shit. Um, these are the physical damage types. left something in the other room. Uh, but I keep thinking in my head that like I want to explore unions for being able to select properties on a potion that might be different depending on what type of potion it is. But at the same time, that's like I'm like attempting to pre-optimize. Even now, I'm attempting to do that, but like I want to avoid having to think about these things when I run into them because I've done that for a lot of these games development, and I want to start making better, like bigger strides with getting this thing out the gate, or at least to a point where I can actually load it up in a browser for you guys and let y'all play it and tell me how bad you think it sucks. Like over here in component, right? We like when we actually go to create a potion, the whole idea is that we want to be able to programmatically generate an effect for that potion, add it to the potion, and then maybe decide that we want a second effect. Because then we can have potions that do multiple things and we can script it out so that potions are totally like mostly uniquely created. So one of the problems with this idea is that we have to put a reason, like we would want to put a reasonable cap on how many effects get added to a potion. Otherwise, shit could get really out of control, right? So like let's say we limited the number of effects that a potion could have to like say 4 or some small number, right? And eventually maybe we could even do more, but like this would also allow for players to create and customize their own potions. But like I was saying earlier, because of the way that effects can be potentially handled, and because we have not yet fully fleshed out all of the different types of effects that can occur, we're running into a point where I'm just going to have to sit down and do something to get something on paper, right? And then we're going to have to kind of tease out and figure out like what's going to make sense because we have to put a cap on the scope of this game, right? We have to put a cap on how many features we implement over time. We can't do everything. And every new thing that we decide to add is going to make this thing take longer. That's a potion effect, right? then when we go to generate a like potion component, what we're going to end up doing is generating between 1 and 4 effects. Attach those effects to the component, add the component to the component table, and then and that's like about half of the battle there, right? That'll actually get us to spawn potions in the dungeon. Just like we'll start with health potions. Fuck it. And then we have to like actually handle using the potions in the inventory once you pick them up. So we've got potion there. Um, so first we create a new component function that will create and add a new potion. Um, I'm not sure that's right. So the so this in particular, like It's like for weapons and shields, you know, I'm gonna have to extend those, and same thing with items. Um, so we define the potion effects before we call this function, right? So I'm gonna have to have some stuff that like generates potion effects randomly, depending upon some parameters, and then we decide on how many we want to generate, and then we call this function with those attached effects. Bool g is potion. Um, we could set this up so that we don't have to generate the effects before we add the potion to our list of potions. This is kind of a convenience function. Um, but actually it does lend to but I also noticed num effects doesn't get used at all in this. So yeah, actually realistically, Oops. Potion, oh, potion.age. Oh, my arm is starting to hurt. Need some medicine. Um, based off of this, if we wanted to create new potion. Not too different from how we're creating weapons. Essentially, we create a new item, and then we have to register it as a potion, and then we have to create the effects and attach them. I have to piss again. Okay. Getting towards time for my baby girl to get up and all that good stuff. But before we do, I want to take a look at potions. It was the old way. Oh, good. The restream chat seems to have fixed itself. Uh, oh, we getting some serious views. Holy shit. I knew it was a good idea to get on today. I need to do this pretty much every day. But I'll probably take a break and we'll get back on later on after I finish this up. That way I can charge up, take care of my animals, relax. Maybe we'll come back on the couch later. All right, so a lot of the idea here is that everything should operate very similar. So like potion create, right? Um, okay, better yet, you know what? I'm gonna have to change how I do this. We're gonna break this up a little bit further. No longer a potion component. Now potion type component. We got potion component now. Sorry, potion type component. list. Start with, we're just going to do potion type. Instead of making everything into one big component, I'm going to break everything up into smaller components. It should be more scriptable that way, and I don't have to like burden myself with thinking about how do I handle all of these different things together. This way I can focus on individual things, build them up over time. Once we have these, that was why I did that, was that I realized, when we're registering these components, um, so here we would create the potion, give it a type of potion health, and it gets placed in the dungeon somewhere. So before we can actually see the potion appear, we have to make sure that we're loading it. But my girl just woke up. And you know what that means? It's that time of day. Grace is going to say hi to y'all, and we're going to take a little break. Let me check in my code before we... Grace, come say hi. There she is. Wakey, wakey. Got a big yawn for us? Yeah. Good girl. All right, y'all. Take it easy until next time. I'll have more for you that's further along. As you can see, we're making progress. Peace.